Greetings, I'm Solidus-Skully, and welcome back to the Devil May Cry 2 commentary. Now we are taking on our second mission as Mr. Dante Spada Esquire, and now all the players are set, and all the pieces are lined from whence they came. We have an evil demonic sorcerer, we indeed have a little bit of backstory in regards to Dante's father Spada, and again it is, I suppose, technically a piece of Spada's history that does kind of, well, remain to be seen, really. Again, how long ago was it that he fought against, the evil demon Argusax and sealed him away? Hence all the arcana that we've been collecting. And in turn, does he know Mathieu personally, or is this a case where he was pretty much doing this eons ago, long before he met Eva, long before he had sons, and, I suppose before whatever happened to him? I mean, they do technically keep a lot of Spada's, history a little bit vague, particularly in terms of, like, what happened to him and how he died. I mean, the only piece of media that I seem to recall ever going into that was the reboot, which technically had him trapped forever in limbo, but yeah, it's curious. We never really find out what happened to Spada apart from the fact that he died, and I guess the implication is that Mundus was the one who killed him, but neither here nor there in this case. In any case, though, to talk about, more in regards to Devil May Cry 2's visual storytelling, yeah, we do actually get to see, again, not necessarily in terms of, like, a text or examining, a lot of the bookshelves or whatever, like you had in the previous game in terms of, the Castellan, and the influence that Mundus had on Malay Island. Instead, what you get to see here is more of a visual representation of, the various warriors and religious wars that were fought by the Protectorate and the V de Mali, and those who followed Argusax the Chaos. Which, I mean, to kind of go into it a little bit, Argusax the Chaos is very much, our main bad guy of the now. A demon emperor who rivaled Mundus in terms of power, although was secondary to him, mainly because of him consuming the Qlipoth roots. But again, that's mainly to do with Devil May Cry 5 and Qlipoth roots basically giving you extra demon power, just add water. But yeah, with Mundus out of the picture after Dante pretty much killed him, Argusax pretty much has free reign, and yeah, it's also here where we begin to talk to Arius, our next main man of the hour, who's very much, a rich businessman. He's a dark sorcerer, and is very much just trying to usurp Argusax's power so he can pretty much rule the land in typical, I'm a rich evil shit, fuck it, might as well earn internal demonic power, purely because, well, I'm the only one who should have it, and I want to be eternal. Dearie me. Ambition, greed, being the eternal enemy. Will wonders ever cease? But yeah, they're also going to talk about how I'm going to be handling the secret rooms. Again, as I mentioned beforehand, they're basically just combat segments dealing with certain enemies throughout the game, so yeah, to cut down on repetition, my sanity, and also the length of the videos, yeah, they're pretty much going to be condensed, because all you get for completing all the enemies is that you beat up Wave 1, then you beat up Wave 2, and then you get either, like, some orbs or, a refill for your Devil Trigger and a green orb for health as your reward, or a blue orb to, deliver some tasty health treats. So yeah, that's pretty much all she wrote, and it is also, in turn, what was later the inspiration for another game mode in Devil May Cry 2, the Bloody Palace mode, which, yeah, actually has its debut in this game as opposed to 3. Which, again, was basically just, an ingredient of add gameplay fodder, just add water. And yeah, it works quite nicely. Might potentially show it off later on as a part of the bonus video, but yeah, what you saw right there, when you increase Dante's Devil Trigger, he actually has, some wrist gauntlet chain guns, where he basically goes to town, mows enemies down, and once again is parallel to that common critique of Devil May Cry 2 being shoot to win. Though it does make me wonder, I do seem to recall that a lot of people have churlishly gone on challenge modes where people have tried to use, nothing but the swords instead of the guns, and, again, there are aspects where you do technically need to use the guns in order to progress, but by that same token, though, again, you can still very much play with swords as your main method of combat if you want to. It's just not quite as proficient a method as, what later games would have you believe. But yeah, regardless of such though, again, continuing our tertiary puzzle elements to add that varietal spice that is the gameplay. Oh, we can't go through. We must light a blue flame, and the way will be opened. In the Catacombs of protectors long since past. And I mean, if I can say anything else, I do really miss this macabre sort of atmosphere that I mean, again, going forward into the series, I will say that it lost, particularly with 3 going for its more, like, overtly comedic tone. But I mean, even in that case, like, I mean, 3 did still technically have some of that atmosphere in the Tim and Negru. 4, not really. Then 5... Well, 5 is a bit of an odd dog. I mean, again, it had macabre elements, like, here and there, but again, a lot of it was, once again, more focused on the action side of things as opposed to, you know, gothic horror, which is, you know, part of the thing that really sort of attracted me to the first 2 Devil May Cry games, and that it really just sort of hit that, you know, sweet spot of being macabre and creepy as opposed to just, you know, completely actionized and, you know, tee-hee, hoddle-ha, fuck you, Featherface. But yeah, I mean, it's sections like this that really do sort of, you know, fill in the void between, you know, the stylish action, the, you know, macabre horror aspects, which, again, it's a nice balance that, you know, if Devil May Cry hits it right, it's bellissimo. But yeah, also returning from Devil May Cry 1 as well is also the Curse-Seal Wars. Stand near them and they'll basically have a hand that pretty much goes out and grabs you and, well, again, I did actually test out in the first game that, again, you won't technically die. All the Curse-Seal hands pretty much do is just sort of, like, pinch a bit of your health, but they won't technically kill you. I don't know whether or not that's the same case in Devil May Cry 2, but, yeah, it might be something to test out for a future playthrough. But yeah, regardless of such, you might be noticing that a lot of the puzzles around here, again, a lot more compared to the first game, revolve more around just hit the thing as opposed to anything more complex, so... Yeah, I mean, again, when it comes to, like, puzzles and all that, I mean, I seem to... Again, it's been a while since I played DMC5, but I seem to recall 5 getting rid of it completely, whereas, yeah, 3 and 4 kind of tend to repeat aspects of the first game's puzzle design in the sense of, like, it's gonna be either hit the thing just to make sure it goes forward, or, like, choose the correct pathway. But, yeah, it's neither here nor there in this case. In any case, we also have, yeah, these, sorcerers, pyromancers, aeromancers, and, eventually... I don't want to say that they're called lightning mancers, but, yeah, basically, they're all pretty much what they say on the tin. Some summon fire, others summon lightning, others summon, like, wind and energy orbs, so, yeah, you do need to be on your guard and make sure that you don't get pip damage from that rather large hitbox of the flames, because otherwise, your style is shrinking. It's all gone! But yeah, if you look up in the enemy description, they're basically meant to be, well, heretics who pretty much devoted themselves towards the teachings of Argus Sex the Chaos. And you might be wondering, why do people decide to flock towards a demon emperor when they're obviously evil? You know, as opposed to when they're completely demons themselves, as was the case with, you know, Mundus, you know, having his henchmen of, you know, Phantom, Griffin, and, well, Nightmare. Well, I mean, Nightmare's case was kind of a bit different since it was basically, you know, a bioweapon created by Mundus. You know, somewhat owing to its Resident Evil origins. Oh yeah, by the way, these, you know, these golems over there can actually poison you, hence requiring the Holy Star to purify the soul and bless Dante with not being poisoned anymore. But yeah, when it comes to Argus Sex the Chaos, a lot of these creations are rather different, as you'll be seeing right here, as, yeah, the golem itself can actually regenerate. Yeah, not all of them are creations of, you know, Argus Sex the Chaos. Some of them are his devout followers, as you will be seeing throughout the game. Others of which are, in fact, you know, bioweapon creations of Arius, which explains why they don't quite have as much autonomy or free will or even as much personality as, you know, what you would have seen Griffin or Phantom or whatever else have. So yeah, it does show a bit of a stark contrast between how, you know, Arius treats his henchmen, as well as Argus Sex for that matter, compared to Mundus, who was very much just, well, let's just call him what he is, a bored god who was basically venerating power to those who serve him well, and if they didn't, well, fuck it, they die. As Griffin learned, despite being a very devout servant of his master, Mundus. But yeah, again, to kind of, like, further lay out the comparisons, Argus Sex comparatively is very much more, well, it kind of borders more on eldritch, unknown sort of evil, whereas Mundus was very much, well, again, supposed to sort of approach that sort of, you know, vain divinity in the vein of, you know, Lucifer, and, well, God, or at least what he compared himself to, so I suppose Lucifer would be an apt comparison in terms of, you know, a being who's vain and wants to be divine, as well as, you know, all the bored trappings that come with that sort of power by going, oh yes, I'm far beyond immortal comprehension and whatever. As opposed to Argus Sex, which, you know, very much plays itself as a bit of an unknown, and once again plays with the element of duality, which again is a key theme that runs throughout the game, and indeed the core thematics of Devil May Cry 2, and the series at large. You know, the intertwined, majesty of joining humans and demons together. Yes. Now, it's not something that necessarily involves Dante directly, mind you, which is a criticism that a lot of people do have, that it's a game that doesn't really seem to feature Dante as a bit of a central role to the game, but that does actually tie into a bit of development history where, well, and again, I'm not really too sure if this was the original game director of DMC2 pre-Itsuno's intervention or one of the game's producers, but yeah, Dante was initially not even going to be in the game to begin with. In fact, quite closely, he was almost replaced by a completely new character in a green jacket, which I suppose was done in the hopes of landing that, diesel clothing tie-in, but again, that's to be seen a little bit later. But yeah, a lot of that was mainly down to the fact that they didn't like Dante's jokey attitude in the first game, which, again, I guess whether out of revenge or I suppose out of the fact that the development staff legitimately liked Dante from the first game, yeah, they pretty much overcompensated for his jokey attitude and then some in DMC3. That had the rather unfortunate side effect of turning the series into a fucking comedy game later on, but that's neither here nor there in this case. Regardless though, we must prove ourselves before the Winged Goat, and in a similar vein to Lucia's mission, yeah, this is pretty much where we end up, fighting the Goatlings. The Goatlings themselves actually have some rather bizarre, ties in the Devil May Cry mythos, where again, if you look into the enemy files, they apparently have fluency in English and all sorts of demonic languages, so yeah, I mean, in a rather bizarre way, there is, a bit of a demonic society going about. You know, not in the same sense of, bizarre 20-year out-of-date War on Terror parallels, as a certain recent television show would lead you to believe, but, rather a demonic culture of, demons, really, that actually treats them as such. But yeah, needless to say, though, again, I mean, there are small bits and pieces of tidbits you can find out in Devil May Cry 2's, mythology, if you know better look. It's just a matter that it doesn't really present it as well as it otherwise should have. And, yeah, much as people are sort of clamoring for a DMC1 remake or a DMC3 remake to sort of get it all to tie together, again, challenge as it might be, I think Devil May Cry 2 is the only game that I feel would really benefit from a remake with modern design sensibilities and, well, I mean, in turn, I guess also showing the series having a bit of staying power, because again, in the interim between DMC5 and now, again, 2019, I hate to tell you this, and I hate to tell myself this, but, it's been about 6 fucking years since then, so, yeah, bit of a long time between 2019, and, game development might be a bit of a lengthy beast these days, but, DMC5 did sell well, it was popular, so, really, what the fuck? Is anything going on? The series is still popular, but it doesn't even have the divisive excuse of Devil May Cry 4's sales not really doing very well, so, or the Devil May Cry reboot not panning out, so really, what's the fucking deal, really? I don't know anymore. I truly don't know. But yeah, basically, because of the stingy ranking system, prepare to see a lot of B's and C's on my report card. Rather shamefully.
Did you obtain the other Arcanus, my dear? Here is the bastone. Now we have only one piece remaining. I believe that it is in the ruin.
I know.
Why, you cheeky little bitch, don't you get snippy with me, 'cause I might be old, Mathieu, but I will smack you with my cane.
But yeah, to kind of talk about it a little bit seriously for a moment, I do, out of all the characters that I have wanted to see return to the series, Lucia, first of all, had a rather, well, again, it's a lot less developed compared to the likes of, Lady and, Trish somewhat. She doesn't really get a lot of development outside of DMC1 for the most part anyway, so that's kind of a wee bit pish. In fact, it's arguable that Lucia actually does get a bit more development in terms of her personal growth, but, yeah, Lucia does get quite the growth arc, but, yeah, talking to brass tacks, Mathieu, I really like the character as, like, being a genuinely supportive, like, a sort of grandmotherly figure, and again, I feel like for the brief scenes that she does have a nice rapport with both Dante and Lucia, as we see later on in the game. And again, it just goes to show that even with limited screen time, you can have a character that leaves a great impact, and again, it does make me wonder, did Mathieu fight alongside Sparta, like, against the hordes of Argosex when she was younger? Or is it more of a case of, you know, she grew up learning the legends and, you know, just wants to regale Dante with the story? Which, I mean, yeah, is again, once again, going to show Dante's nobility in spite of his whole stoic sort of, like, yep, just another day in the life. Yeah, all in regards to him literally flipping a coin. You know, he's not doing this for money, he's just doing this for a story of his father Sparta. But yeah, in any case, though, to talk about anything else as to where Lucia is going, we have yet another piece of the Arcana to collect, and, yeah, this pretty much involves us taking a trip in towards the city and various other areas of the game, so yeah, the Vita Mali does have a lot more to it. Again, as I pretty much pointed out, this is pretty much the Southtown area that seems to have a lot more of its archaic European-influenced buildings, whereas some of the more developed areas is very much where Arius sets up his domain, for lack of a better phrase. But danger is afoot! Look out, Lucia, it's the Master Goatling! And, yeah, another cool facet of Devil May Cry 2's ranking system is that it actually factors in Trickster moves and as well as, you know, your Gunslinger moves as part of your style. So again, effectively dodge enemies and you gain style points for it. I want to say that this mechanic was kept in Devil May Cry 3 as well, but placed a lot less emphasis on it in lieu of the combat schema, which, again, like, I mean, I know that Devil May Cry 2 has really under-refined mechanics, and a lot of it is undercooked in a lot of aspects that I am willing to admit. But part of me does kind of wish that, you know, again, the combat's probably about as good as it's ever going to be in regards to Dante, and, well, I mean, again, if the series is going to continue on with Nero, him as well. But that being said, I mean, I would like to see greater emphasis put on the style system for refining mechanics of the Trickster and Gunslinger abilities, and, well, I mean, Royal Guard especially, you know, in regards to, you know, not just improving your combat schema, but in turn, well, just improving the platforming aspects, which was gradually a bit more toned down as the series went on. And I mean, if there is anything I can praise DMC2 for over its successors and predecessors, the platforming aspects, again, by proxy of how well the game controls, and, you know, the fact that you pretty much have your air hike unlocked as standard as opposed to having to purchase it from the Statue of Time. I mean, it is, you know, technically, I mean, by technicality, it is, you know, the best platforming controls that you'll see in a Devil May Cry game. It's easy to get to grips with. And again, you do have the aerial hearts pretty much, you know, act as a bit of a buffer between jumps in case you totally blow it, so yeah. And not to mention, again, your gunslinger abilities, particularly with your Rainstorm, the Lucia's thing right there, can also give you a wee bit of a boosty if you just want to get up to a platform. Come into my arms and I'll fly there with you, but unfortunately, we are stuck with a height cap on our flight. Poor Lucia, but now we have a blue orb. We are much healthier now than we were before. But yeah, to talk about Lucia's combat in regards to, compared to Dante, who was more refined swordsman, yeah, Lucia's main thing is pretty much dealing with multiple opponents. In this case, her moveset is basically just, you know, short-range weaponry, you know, in regards to her, you know, little blades that she has right there. But, yeah, she's also meant to deal with a lot of enemies at close range, which, yeah, DMC2 does kind of screw the pooch on her a little bit in the sense that, again, a lot of enemies that are either of aerial range, you can technically reach by proxy of her, you know, knives, which are a lot quicker on the throw. Well, again, there's a slight delay between when she throws and when she receives it compared to Dante's Ebony and Ivory that do have a quicker firing ratio, you know, due to throwing arms taking a little bit quicker to fire off than guns, but yeah, again, it's, she is very quick on the draw and, yeah, mainly meant to, you know, usually be dealing with enemies such as, you know, the Masiras, as opposed to, you know, anything else, but, yeah. But again, that's, I mean, that's what I'm saying about wanting to see Lucia again, like, I mean, imagine this sort of gameplay, but with the refinements of, you know, what the post-3 later games would have provided, and that, I feel, you know, would do her a great service in terms of, you know, not only having the difficulty and enemy dynamics create a bit of a challenge, but in turn, you know, with those close combat scenarios, have Lucia pretty much, you know, take on a whole bunch of foes at once, and, you know, come out on top kicking ass and taking names, which... Again, it's just a bit of a shame that she just never really showed up again. I mean, it is understandable as to why she doesn't really, because, you know, she's the protectorate of the Vida Molly, and, you know, she is a guardian of the land and is one there to sort of protect the land, even if she does have a bit of an unrequited crush on Mr. Dante Esquire, for whatever that's worth. But yeah, all that aside though, yes, given the game's reception, it's unlikely that we'll ever see Lucia ever again, but... I mean, honestly, if a Devil May Cry 2 remake isn't going to reinvigorate interest, then... I've really no idea what else to say. I mean, I suppose there is also the aspect of maybe there's a potential Devil May Cry 6 where she could return in, but... Well, I mean, again, if there hasn't been a Devil May Cry 6 announced, you know, now, then will it ever technically be announced? Which does technically also kind of bring it into, well... Yeah, something that I've been thinking about, actually. I thought that actually occurred to me when I heard that Dante was initially going to be replaced in DMC2. Which, yeah, would have been quite odd, really, but it does make me wonder whether or not the Devil May Cry series as a whole can survive without Dante. I mean, again, I don't think he's going to be rid from the series wholesale, because, I mean, I'm not going to spoil the ending of 5, but it is sort of putting him in a position similar to Virgil, where... I fathom that, again, if they do continue with Nero as the main playable character, they'll probably have Dante appear as, like, a DLC kind of thing, kind of similar to what they did with DMC4 Special Edition and 5. But again, it just leaves me wondering that, can the series survive without Dante as the main protagonist, or can the series ever technically move on? Because, I mean, while I think Nero is a bit better received nowadays, you know, especially after his character development in 5... Would people be willing to accept him as the main playable character, or, you know, would they need to have Dante as a crutch yet again? Because, again, loath as I am to bring it up, you know, the 2025 Dick Flick series, you know, is trying to be its whole reimagining of Devil May Cry 3-ish with other elements of the series that doesn't really connect to anything. So again, it's just a matter of is it just using popular character from game just simply because that's the one that people recognize? Or is the series truly afraid to push forward with a new protagonist, or is it just constantly having to rely on old ground, either out of fear that people would reject it, or out of fear that, you know, people just wouldn't accept new characters? You know, because, I mean, back during Devil May Cry 4's time, there was a time when Nero was pretty much looked at as emo Dante, before actual emo Dante showed up with the Devil May Cry reboot, that kind of took the sting out of Nero's hatred somewhat. But, yeah... Again, it's a very weird and precarious position the series is placed in now, in the sense that, again, I mean, Devil May Cry is popular. A lot of the games have, you know, had more hits than misses, so... Again, I mean, whether or not Itsuno is going to be in the directing chair or not, because, I mean, I think he did technically leave Capcom at this stage, so who would helm the series is up for debate, but... I don't know, I mean, it feels like a lot of the team is still there, so... I guess it's just either, you know, the willingness for people to want to do it, or... I guess maybe whether or not Capcom sees it as a worthwhile investment, which, again, knowing Capcom and, you know, how they treated some other franchises, like, I mean, again, I will admit, in recent years, they have given the likes of, you know, Mega Man 11 or, you know, even Devil May Cry 5 a shot. So they're not entirely unforgiving in this current generation, it's just that, well, I mean, again, same as always, same as ever, Street Fighter and Resident Evil are the moneymakers for Capcom, so of course, they're gonna focus exclusively on that. But rather saddeningly, it's just, you know, they have a lot of great games and IPs. I mean, even going beyond Devil May Cry, it's just that they're not really using them, and that's just kind of a bit of a shame. But again, to get off less depressing topics, what we just picked up was, again, the next amulet. In this case, an amulet that pretty much, when you activate Devil Trigger mode, regenerates your health, and, that does also kind of bring the amulet system into focus here, because, again, you might be noticing a few additional attacks that Lucia has compared to Dante. In this case, she also has replacing her Electro Heart with the Frost Heart, which basically contains, you know, certain perks and status buffs towards your enemies. Again, utilizing the Frozen Heart will basically slow enemies down and prevent their attacks from hitting you. And, yeah, you also have, you know, the Healing Heart, which is pretty much there to, you know, regenerate your health quicker. And eventually you'll get other ones such as, you know, the Offensive Amulet, which will pretty much be there to increase your damage output. And again, eventually the Flame Amulet that'll be there to, well, basically let you lay the smackdown upon your enemies. by proxy of, well, you know, just sort of, you know, doing a wee bit more damage. So, yeah, it's a bit of an odd duck, but a lot of this was also inspired by the earlier build of Devil May Cry 1 before fist weapons were really implemented, where, again, Dante would basically get different swords that would basically give him different attributes to his attacks. Well, there she blows. Jokagulm. I believe this was actually based upon a demon from Chinese mythology, but yeah, Jokagulm does admittedly reflect a bit of the design ethos for a lot of the large-scale bosses in the game. Again, of which there are basically, you know, more behemoths as opposed to, you know, specific figures akin to Nilo Angelo. Not that we won't be seeing a few of those figures, but, yeah, behemoth boss fights seem to be this game's meat and potatoes, for lack of a better phrase. And, again, Jokagulm does have, you know, decent enemy dynamics in terms of keeping it protected. You know, again, you take out, you know, its tentacles in order to prevent its poison spores from spraying forth. Again, it will pretty much launch it out of its mouth, but again, so long as you take out all the tentacles, well, then again, the more it has to regenerate, and the less chance it has of spraying its poison gunk all over Lucia, that will gradually drain your health. So, yeah, there is technically a fair few dynamics to play with a boss fight, but it just sort of lacks a bit of the finesse that you would have seen from previous games in terms of, you know, really sort of, you know, doing more damage. Again, like, I mean, again, the more you take out, the more time it takes for, you know, Jokagulm to regenerate her shields. But I never have successfully taken out all the tentacles at once, really. I mean, I guess you can technically do enough damage towards its threshold and then maybe take them out one by one when the tentacles are weakened enough, but yeah, it's never been one I've been able to fully test out all of its enemy dynamics, which is a little bit of a shame, because Devil May Cry 2, while its bosses can be considered rather easy fare, it does have its, you know, unique tells, enemy dynamics, and, you know, moments that a lot of people don't really give the game credit for, but, yeah, this is also a case where, you know, Lucia's Divine Anger and Divine Rush abilities come in handy, where, again, you enter Devil Trigger mode and she'll either rain down hell from the sky, or pretty much, you know, activate a wave of pain and terror upon our enemies. But anyway, Jokagulm is down, and, yeah. I believe it was also technically based on one of the enemy prototypes from Devil May Cry 1, basically a Kraken enemy that I believe Dante would have faced, you know, when with a sunken ship underwater. Oh, we can't enter that garage. Lucia would have gotten a sick motorcycle, but alas, it was not meant to be. But not to worry, Lucia, she can fly, she can fly, she can fly, Azalea, Azalea, Peter Pan. So yeah, Lucia's pretty much getting a direct route to the city, meanwhile Dante pretty much has to wander forth in the underground ruins and make his way to the surface. But yeah, the basic implication in terms of chronology here is that Lucia is pretty much meant to make it to the city first, and Dante is pretty much following behind as he wades through the catacombs, and does go through the similar city area that Lucia went through before, which, again, to cut down on the repetition of the game, I am going to be cutting down both for the sake of my sanity and in turn for, you know, sort of seeing the ground, you know, that you've already seen once, because again, what Lucia fought, you know, against one of the members of the Goat Clan, you know, whatever. Deary me, from one boss fight to another, this is Orangera. And also where the, you know, sick as hell theme song originates, and I'm enjoying this theme to hell and back. But yeah, Orangera is, well, actually a boss fight that does kind of go reminiscent towards the first game's design philosophy. And yeah, you can also do round trip while in Dante's Devil Trigger, not quite as useless as it was in the first game. But yeah, Orangera is very much one who can very easily pip you out of your Devil Trigger, not just by hitting you like that, but also with some of his attack patterns where, again, he'll pretty much grab Dante, choke the life out of him, drain his health, and then pretty much store him against the wall. But, again, there are ways in which around it. You can actually utilize your swords to cut off Orangera's arms, and, yeah, actually does change up the dynamics of the fight, as he has less of a means of blocking your attacks, and in turn, well, he can't do some of his movesets, which makes him feel like a much more developed boss than a lot of the other ones that you would have seen in the game, at least a little bit more so compared to the likes of Jokagulm that we saw previously. But yeah, a lot of the same rules still apply. He's not that difficult of a challenge compared to anything else, but he does have a lot of attacks that pip you out of your, well, style ranking, which can be a wee bit pish. And gradually he will start summoning other enemies to sort of help him out of the fight. Particularly some of the other poison variants of the Mysterias, so yeah, could be a wee bit shit. But yeah, he also has like a, well, let's just call it what it is really, a sonic boom ability where he can pretty much launch out a soundwave attack at you, and he'll also pretty much slap you around like a pair of gigantic titties. So yeah, I mean, in terms of a boss fight that keeps you on your feet despite its ease of difficulty in the normal mode, well, I mean, again, I say ease of difficulty as I'm getting my ass kicked. Yeah, I mean, again, you can pretty much knock down pillars. And yeah, be careful of that clap attack, because he can actually, you know, well, that's pretty much the attack he utilizes to, well, drain your health something fierce. But yeah, this is me very much just trying desperately to cut off his arms as opposed to, you know, going completely aggro on his attack patterns. But either way, like, I mean, again, again, I know I've been praising this game probably a lot more than a lot of people think it deserves, but yeah, I mean, in terms of stage hazards and dynamics and, you know, again, stage destruction, you know, with how Orangera's knocking down pillars and all that, again, it is quite a well-done boss fight, so yeah, good on the development team. And see, we cut off his arm, he reacts in pain, and again, it's stuff like that that really sort of makes me wish that Devil May Cry 2 was a more complete game than what we got. I mean, again, had Itsuno been in the director's chair from the beginning, or, I don't know, maybe the original director stuck it out? Again, I really don't know. It does make me wonder how much of this game was, you know, a product of the original vision and how much of it was a product of Itsuno's, you know, attempts at adding mechanics that he just didn't have time to refine just yet. But either way, I mean, if there's any story to learn from Devil May Cry 2, it's basically an exercise in Capcom's, well, greed and avarice, which would unfortunately be a bit of a turning point for the company as, yeah, come the late 2000s, the company would eventually stop being, you know, one of the revered, beloved gaming companies and eventually start being one that a lot of people hated up until the Revention arc around about the point of Resident Evil 7, so yeah, it's, Capcom's had a long, rough road. And could potentially still be quite rough, with no Devil May Cry 6 in sight, and all people have to really tie themselves over is with a terrible TV show that undeservedly is getting a second season. Dearie me. But yeah, you might be thinking that that'd pretty much be it in terms of what you can do with Orangera, but no. You can actually cut off his other arm as well, which I actually demonstrate shortly before killing him, so yeah. So yeah, he can't exactly drain your health, but he can toss you about like, well, Fey Ray, for lack of a better phrase, so yes indeedy, Orangera, what do you like? Oh, don't worry, monkey boy, we cut off both your arms and now the only thing you can do is basically his Sonic Scream attack. Again, I mean, I'm just lamenting what could have been. I mean, again, Orangera's a pretty decent showcasing of what some of the boss fights could have been like, and again, there are quite a few others that do have the potential to be great boss fights as well. It's just that it's unfortunately counterbalanced by a lot of other boss fights in Devil May Cry 2 that are, well, kind of range from, you know, very mid to kinda cappy shit. But yeah, in any case, why we needed to fight Orangera in the train station is because, well, we couldn't access the door that, well, Lucia could access, so, yeah. Now we unlocked it. And, yeah, you do pretty much go through the same, hub area that Lucia goes through, but, again, with her door locked and, the garage unlocked, Dante then gets a shotgun for his troubles, and after defeating Jokagulm, he also gets a motorcycle. So on that note, I'm Solidus-Skully, keep it new metal, and next time on the Devil May Cry 2 commentary, we're making tracks for the city, dude.